true. I surrender to you. My life, I give you. My love, I give you. My all. Your touch, your kiss, your grace to me is deeper than my soul can see. My purpose, my hands were made to worship you. My heart, my King, it beats for you. Oh, Lamb, so true. I surrender to you. My life, I give you. My love, I give you. My all. Your touch, your kiss, your grace to me is deeper than my soul can see. My purpose it changed when I call out your name.
GHIJK 1 2 3 Good evening. How's everyone doing? Well, welcome to the age of technology. We have a short, well, I don't know necessarily a short, but we have a delay. Our stream team is trying to work out some challenges, so please be patient as they work out those challenges. We'll have some music going to kind of fill the air. And welcome to 2021 or 2022 Black History Program.
too scary. I know that he is with me because he tells me he loves me so dearly, so dearly. I cannot imagine how he loves me. That's how much he loves me. He loves you more today than yesterday, but not as much as tomorrow. He loves you more today than yesterday, but no, no, not as much as tomorrow.
But the greatest of these is love. Oh, love. The greatest of these is love. Oh, love, love, love. I can have all the knowledge in the world. What good is it without love? My faith is so great I can remove the mountains. But what good is it without love?
we actually have some footage of the activism that's happening in that area. Would you like to take a look?
Why, yes, I would.
In 1849, there were 1,080 slaves in Dallas County. At the end of the Civil War, blacks were attracted to the Dallas area due to the prosperity. Dallas had emerged as the largest inland cotton market in the world. So Freeman Town began to form. More than 30 black communities had been documented in the early history of Dallas. We talked about two of those communities last year, Joppy and 10th Street District. This evening, you'll hear about a community that once was the core of black life and how they moved north because of eminent domain, urban renewal, and gentrification. Good evening. I am Kimberly Page, your host for exploring Dallas's Black history with familiar faces in familiar places. Let's begin with Familiar Place with Belinda and Shanine Jones.
Get all your throat clearing done before I hit this recording.
We got it. We're ready.
All right.
Yeah, let's go.
3, 2, 1.
Thanks, Kim.
All right, stop.
Hi, Shanine.
All right, well, you got to be looking at the camera. You can't be looking down when we go.
Okay.
So when you said thanks, Kim, right? 1.
Thanks, Kim. Hey, Shanine.
Hey, Belinda, how are you? I am doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm so excited about this project we're doing this year. I'm so glad to be
Um,
working with you.
I am too. Likewise, what I'm really happy about also is that we are going to continue from what we did last year. And so we're
Hmm.
going to continue on and talk about Freeman towns this year, but we're going to move toward the North Dallas area. And so
Okay.
the project that you and I decided to talk about was area called Freeman Town, North Dallas. And
Yes.
Freeman Town, North Dallas was actually an area that was established. It was about less than 2 miles north of downtown Dallas, and it was
Hmm.
established to escape the vagrancy laws that were put that were put on freedmen after emancipation.
Right. Well, in 1869, there was a white landowner by the name of William Bowles. He sold
Uh-huh.
acreage of land to the African Americans, and his very first transaction was to an African American man by the name of Sam Eakins, for the
Oh,
purpose of purchasing or establishing the Freedman Cemetery. And this
okay.
area was prominent, and I believe it just gave the African Americans at that time a sense of permanency in that area, because in the same year he sold 1 acre plots to a lot of the freedmen. And I
Oh,
believe
wow.
this area, yes, this area here, it was probably a good area for a few reasons. One, it was close to downtown, walking distance. They did not have to worry about racism and or violence, and the
Right.
residents can get like food, supplies, and even education in the area. So it was really good.
Yeah, right. And not only that, Shanine, another advantage for them was like around 1872 or 1873. There were
Hmm.
like a couple of railroads that actually
Hmm.
came to the area, intersected around maybe Pacific Avenue and where like today's
Hmm.
Central Express, well, actually, Central Expressway, what we know as 75, was in that area
Right.
too. So
Hmm.
Freemantown benefited from those railroads because those railroads came and where they intersected at the crossroads at that depot. They brought together people, it brought together goods,
Hmm.
and so
Right.
Freemantown also benefited from like the transportation and everything.
Hmm. And what's good about it is, with segregation being well in place during that time, they
Yeah.
were quick to establish churches, schools, and even social fraternities, which not only gave them a sense of community, but it
Mm-hmm.
also provided them with the necessary skill sets to be successful and to establish and to obtain, like, for their survival as well. So I thought that was good also.
Right. And it's amazing that you talk about the churches and everything because during that time, churches were some of the first, establishments that they had. And what they
Hmm.
would do with the churches, and, I'll name just a few of them that was in that area around that time that was in Freedman Town and around that area and then around, Dallas. Some of the
Uh-huh.
people who are viewing, they may recognize some of the names of these churches, especially those who grew up in this area or they heard their
Right.
parents or grandparents talk about them. You had
Hmm.
like churches like Bethel African American Methodist, you had Evening Chapel, you had Free Mission Baptist, you had New Hope
Hmm.
Baptist, you had St. Paul, you had St. Paul Methodist Church. And
Hmm.
those institutions, some of them, even though they have moved or they were moved because of certain reasons or whatever, or they have
Hmm.
changed their names, or and a lot of them, they're no longer in that area, anymore. So it served a purpose
Right.
for them.
Right. And a lot of the churches being that many in that community was actually pretty important, because it also served as
Hmm.
a classroom for a lot of the adults and the
Right.
children, because back in 1876, when the Texas legislature had mandated the education system be segregated, this left very few funds for the black schools.
Right, right.
So,
And so you had a lot of those ministers who will establish schools and everything back at that time.
mm-hmm,
Like Henry
mm-hmm,
Swan, he taught classes at, St. Paul Methodist. Then you had another
right,
minister by the name of Alan Griggs. He
mm-hmm,
taught classes also. But, his purpose was for higher education. He wanted higher education for his people.
mm-hmm,
And so what he did was he went around the city and he solicited funds from a lot of the Baptist churches and to build a high school. But not only build a
okay,
high school, he actually solicited funds to establish Bishop College, and he also served as one of their first trustees. And the people in the area, he was really known for just
mm-hmm.
being one of those men who just wanted to make sure that the blacks in Texas, they were educated.
Right. And, speaking of a lot of the prominent African Americans that were in Freeman Town in that area, there was also some who owned their own businesses, like Doc Rowan. He was a successful grocery store owner. He had a
Right.
loan, title, and real estate business. And it was also known that he served as a stockholder with the Texas State Fair when it was founded in 1886. I thought
Wow,
that was pretty
wow.
interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were so many prominent residents of Freedman Town. You had like William King. He had one of the first black newspapers in Freedman
Mm-hmm.
Town and in Dallas
Mm-hmm.
rather. And what he did
Mm-hmm.
was he wanted to let everyone know about the happenings of African American life and everything in Dallas. Not only in Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
but his paper, the news, and his writings were like around the country. They were even
Mm-hmm.
international. And so that's a lot
Right.
what he focused on. You also had, some
Mm-hmm.
of your prominent physicians in the area. You had people like Ali Bryan. She was one of the first, she was actually the first female graduate from McCary Medical School in Tennessee. Even though
Okay.
she did not grow up here in Dallas, she actually,
Mm-hmm.
after she graduated, she actually moved her family to Dallas and established a dentist practice here in Freedman Town. And you also have another person by the name of Marcellus Cooper. The interesting fact
Uh-huh.
about Marcellus Cooper was that he was actually born a slave. He was born a slave.
Wow.
And then
Uh-huh.
after emancipation, he left, got
Uh-huh.
it in, and completed high school. He came back to
Right.
Dallas. He actually came back
Right.
to Dallas and he worked for this store called Sanger Brothers. Now, I don't know if you
Familiar.
remember, but I remember when I first came here to Dallas, to this area, it was called Sanger Harris. And
Okay.
so Sanger Harris, I mean, the Sanger Brothers store was located downtown, and
Mm-hmm.
they were kind of known for the architecture of their building. And so
Mm-hmm.
today, DART is actually located in their building, in that building. But anyway, about that, but let's get back to Marcellus Cooper. Marcellus Cooper, he actually, working for Sanger Brothers, he actually raised enough money and saved enough money for himself to go to McCary Medical School himself to pay for his
Mm-hmm.
education. He graduated with a degree in dentistry. He came back to
Wow.
Freedman Town and established a
Okay.
practice in Deep Ellum. And he was
Nice.
the first black dentist in Texas. And not only was he the first black dentist, he established the
Uh-huh.
first black savings bank, the Penny Savings Bank
Wow.
here in Dallas in like 1907. And it was very nice that, I read an article from the Dallas County Historical Commission. They're actually going
Uh-huh.
to put up a marker for him, on Caruth Haven. And
Oh, that's
I thought that was
nice.
very nice,
Yeah,
maintaining that
that's
history.
nice.
Yes. Hmm.
Well, we're talking about, these prominent professionals, and there was one that really stuck out to me when I was doing this research by a
Hmm.
man by the name of Norman W. Harley. Really
Oh,
important
okay.
man. He was a graduate with a master's degree from the University of Chicago. He served as the principal of what was officially called or known as the Colored High School.
Oh,
Now he was the principal there, and he lobbied, or he worked, I'm gonna say, really hard for not only the teachers and the students of the school. He lobbied for them to get another school when that school that they were in became overcrowded. And so they
right.
eventually got a new brick building, and it moved from the location where they were, and it moved to a location, I believe it was Flora and Fairmount. And then
Mm-hmm.
they changed the name to Booker T. Washington High School.
Wow.
I thought
I
that was
mean, it's nice
amazing.
that you mentioned Booker T. Washington High School because um, one of the other committee members, Alicia, she actually sent us a
Uh-huh.
video a couple of weeks ago and of the Garland ISD and, the
Right.
segregation that was, within that district. And they also talked about Booker T. Washington High School because
Mm-hmm.
it was actually, they did not have that higher learning education that they could, buildings and stuff that they could attend. So what in Booker T. Washington, what they did was they took some of those students and they bused them
Mm-hmm.
to Booker T. Washington High School. But unfortunately, they weren't able to, attend a lot of the activities or participate in a lot of the programs
Right.
they had because they had to be
Mm-hmm.
bused back to Garland. And I thought that was
Oh,
interesting.
okay.
Thought that was very interesting.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, yeah,
I'm glad that she shared it with us. Well,
yeah.
by the 1930s, the community, and it started to reach its peak, and it actually became the heart and soul of the Dallas community. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the many African Americans in that area, they really felt a sense of home. Their children were
Right.
educated or getting an education. They were able to shop around, just felt, like a sense of being free. They were even able to join the African American YMCA.
Right. The thing about it, they were normal families. I mean, they went
Right.
to church, they went to
Mm-hmm.
parks.
Mm-hmm.
They actually went to the first African American library here in Dallas, the Dunbar Library,
Uh-huh.
and they enjoyed things like that. And the area, it had its problems or whatever, with
Mm-hmm.
the Jim Crow laws and all that and
Right.
everything going on. So it wasn't without, without its problems or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
people enjoyed their life there.
Right. Right. Well, it's interesting that, we're talking about how everything was built up. You get a sense of family.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, this area we're talking about that experienced this success began to also experience or start to get a decline, and then its demise happened in
Mm-hmm.
1940s. I'm gonna say in the 1940s. I'm not gonna say it's that
Right.
exact year, but in the 1940s. And so the route that started their growth in the Freeman Town area, the
Mm-hmm.
railroad tracks, they were
Yeah.
removed,
Yeah.
and it gave way to construction for Highway 75, or Central Expressway as they call it today.
Right.
And
Right.
so suddenly now you have the east side and the west side. They are cut off from each other. Also, a number of the houses and the shops that was within that right of way were demolished for the sake of the highway, which was actually completed in 1949. So
Well,
it's the
not only
division.
not only that,
Mm-hmm.
then you had in 1939, actually the
Mm-hmm.
residents of Freeman Town and some of the white landowners, they
Mm-hmm.
found out that the Dallas Housing Authority was wanting to put a housing project in that area, and it was called the Roseland Home Projects. Well, actually in 1939 they took them to court. They took the
Uh-huh.
Freeman Town residents and some of the white landowners actually
Mm-hmm.
took the Dallas Housing Authority to court, and
Mm-hmm.
because they wanted to protest them building those projects in that area.
Right.
But unfortunately, the residents, they lost, and so the Dallas Housing Authority was able to come in there and build those projects. And, so now what happens is now we're no longer landowners. We are no
Right.
longer homeowners. Now we have these projects moving in. And so we're being displaced, but we can't go into these white neighborhoods because we're not welcome there. So now
Right.
you have these projects coming in. Now I'm becoming a renter. And
Exactly.
and that's another thing that really hurt that area.
Right. Well, now it gets worse because 2 decades later, in 1962, Woodall Rogers Freeway comes and it demolishes most of Cochran Street and forces several churches and businesses and families to relocate. So now you have residents cut off from downtown, which was a common destination, and they couldn't typically walk where how they used to get to the other side. So here
Right.
now they have to move south, and they're going west of the Trinity River. They are going actually to the neighborhood, the African American neighborhood now, Hamilton Park. At
Right.
Forest Avenue and Central Expressway. So now you have it. We're kind of like being spread out now from where they were centrally located. Now they're having to move outside of the area that they knew and that was thriving for them. And so with all these mixed physical alterations, their social changes began to take effect.
Right.
The segregation, it was dismantling that. And it just kind of like made the blacks in the Dallas area feel like it was just not really coming apart, but it was changing. It was changing.
Right. It was, there was a constant change and, a constant uprooting. And,
Right.
Janine, by the early, the 21st century, the area of Freeman Town, it was like pretty much, it was just like unrecognizable.
Right.
It's like you didn't even know that area even existed anymore. And so when you go through there now, you still have areas like State and Thomas. You have the Uptown area. You still have a few of the landmarks that are left. You have like, just to name a few, you still have the Booker T. Washington High School.
Right.
You have the Moreland YMCA, but it relocated to Oak Cliff. And so now it's housed by the Dallas Black Dance Theater, and more importantly, you have the St. Paul Methodist Church that's still there. And the nice thing about that is that the at least the city of Dallas is continuing to give funds so that those historic landmarks can they can remain, and so that's good. But when you go to areas like Uptown and you go to State and Thomas and in that historic district, it's like you have all these high-rise apartments and you have high-end shopping and all of these upscale restaurants and all of this and everything. You just don't even recognize the area anymore. And so when you walk through there, it's like, what happened? But it was, it's a sign of the times. But the thing about it is, it's our history. We're here to give it. I've learned a lot from it, and I hope that those who are watching, they got a lot from it and everything. And so hopefully, with the references that we left out there, people will go behind us and, they will take the opportunity to kind of look and see what we have studied and everything. And, just keep ourselves just educated on this area that we live in.
Exactly.
So it was nice working with you. It was nice working with you
too.
Yes.
All right. Back to you, Kim.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for telling us about the original North Dallas. Now, we have a special guest that joined our committee, and they're out on location. So let's see where they're at. I think they're at the Dallas Arts District. Let's take a look.
We're live.
Oh, thank you, Belinda and Janine. They just shared with us about the Black community here, which is now the Dallas Arts District. I'm standing right here in front of St. Paul Methodist Church, which is one of the original buildings from the community. I've learned that the bricks on this building are different colors because the community provided the bricks in order to build the church. So it wasn't like there was a contractor who did all the work of the building of the, or adding the bricks. It was the community that provided the bricks in order to build the church. Now across the street is Booker T. So let's go ahead and head over there. So now, here I am at Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts. Now, this school originally was the colored number 2. So where I'm standing at is Brock Street. And to my left, which is north, is Woodall Rogers. Woodall Rogers built through the Black Shaneen. The construction of that destroyed houses. This is here in the city. Now, I'm going to walk around the corner here to show you some differences. Right here on Flora Avenue. Follow me. So now we're here at the front of Booker T. Washington High School. This is the original building from when the school was erected, right here on Flora Avenue. Now, this is the Arts District. So down here on my right, you had the Wind Spear across the street from the Wind Spear, you had the Wiley, and then next to the Wind Spear, you had the Symphony. I know many of you have probably been here for a play, a musical, a dance performance. So now you know that this was once a thriving community for blacks, where there were businesses, there were homes, doctors, lawyers, attorneys lived here. Everything that a black family needed was right here. Now follow me, we're gonna go visit another building right here in the area. Get my mask on. So we just walked through Monarch Plaza, which is right in the pathway of Flora Street. So now I'm standing on the opposite side at the former Bowl and Flora Street. This is where, in 1905, Dr. Odie Bryant had her dentist practice. And then in 1906, right here in this very intersection, there was a political rally to get blacks to go to the polls and vote. Right here in this very area. So right where this parking lot is at, there were homes, there were businesses. And if you look out in the distance, you can see the cars on the ramp. That's Woodall Rogers. If you look down further east, you'll see 75. So where 75 and Woodall Rogers intersect, that land just south of there was the black community, and now today the Arts District. Follow me across the street. So also, Belinda and Shalene talked about the former Northern YMCA, which is now home to the Dallas Black Dance Theater. This building is right here in the community where blacks would come to organize themselves. There were high school dances, there were basketball games here. This is where Thurgood Marshall has stayed at. This was a very strong community connector where a lot of things happen, a lot of strategizing, a lot of planning, a lot of celebrations happen here. So here you have it. What is now the Arts District was once the black community. Back to you, Kimberly. Together for Lisa Willis as she sings Trouble of the World.
done with the troubles of this world? Trouble of this world. Trouble this world. Soon I will be done with the trouble of this world. I'm going home to live with my God. No more weeping and wailing. No more weeping and wailing. Oh, no more weeping and wailing. I'm going home to live with my God. Soon I will be done with the trouble of this world. Trouble of this world. Trouble of this world. Soon I will be done with the trouble of this world. I'm going home to live with my God.
Thank you, Lisa. What? We're going to hear from her? Okay, so our special person on the field, or out in the field, I believe she's over in North Park. So let's see what she's going to share with us over in North
Thanks,
Park.
Kimberly. I'm standing here at North Park Center parking lot. This land used to be a cotton field. It was owned by the Carew family, whose plantation home was just south of Northwest Highway. So the next time you're here, remember what was here. That was. Thanks, Kimberly. I'm standing here at North Park Center parking.
Just in case you might have missed the first half. The Carew family land stretched from east to west, from Preston Road past White Rock Lake, and north to south from Forest Lane to nearly downtown Dallas. They grew cotton, raised cattle, and operated a dairy. Over the years, the Carew family acquired more than 30,000 acres of land. Our next community will take us east of the Carew plantation, just off of Northwest Highway, between Aldelia and Ferndale. This area now is today's Lake Highlands. Jeff and Hannah Hill were former slaves that owned land. They built a church and called it Little Egypt Baptist Church, and the area became known as Little Egypt. The area was 35 acres, and within the Dallas city, now I'm going to say this part slow and start over. The area was 35 acres and within Dallas city limits until 1965, when the area was rezoned and purchased by developers. In the 50s, Gloria and Joanne McCoy grew up in Little Egypt. During an interview, Gloria states, "We had no running water," 1950s. "We had no running water. We didn't have indoor plumbing. We had the outhouse, and we had butane gas, and we had a telephone." Joanne, her sister, recalls their house having the only telephone in the neighborhood. The only telephone in the neighborhood. No running water, no electricity, butane gas, and the outhouse in the 50s. And so she and her sisters and her siblings would run up the road and say, "So-and-so, telephone's for you." So the community shared that one telephone. Their dad was out and saw sprinklers watering near the nearby Flagpole Hill, which was just west of where they lived. So Mr. McCoy was on a mission to get running water in his neighborhood. He was unsuccessful. In May of 1962, led by Patriarch William Hill, residents of Little Egypt moved to new homes. The families received enough money to buy new houses, most relocated to Oak Cliff or Rockwall County. For the McCoys, by 1961, they moved west near Love Field to a small modern home. I'm thinking they moved to Elm Thicket, which is our next familiar place. Let's go to Studio B and join Alicia and Tanya.
I'm so glad that we continued our exploration of Dallas's Black history. I love that we got to research the Elm Thicket area. So am I. I'm learning so much about so many things about just the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Yes. So did you know that Elm Thicket is also known as Elm Thicket or Elm Thicket North Park? Yes. It is a traditionally African-American neighborhood located just east of Love Field Airport. The neighborhood is in a prime location with great access to shopping, jobs, and public transportation. It's bounded by Mockingbird to the south, Lover's Lane to the north, Inwood Road to the east, and Lemon Avenue to the west. Existing records indicate that blacks settled into the area as early as 1912. Wow. Newspaper articles from the 1920s and 1930s depict the area as a bustling, well-developed community of small to modest houses. Elm Thicket also hosted a Negro resort, a baseball field, the Negro Garden Club, and at least one restaurant. Sounds fancy. Dave's Barbecue, which triggered my interest in research. In 1915, L.T. Dave rode his bike from Grimes County, which is between College Station and Houston, to the Dallas area at the age of 12 years old. Wait a minute. A 12-year-old taking that long of a journey on a bike? On a bike, which it's like 179 miles. Sounds dangerous. Yeah, because it's 2 hours and 26 minutes by car. So it was a long journey. Wow, that's amazing. During L.T. Dave's early years in Dallas, he worked as a chauffeur and handyman for a man named Mr. A.C. Eby. Mr. Eby was a powerful businessman. and general manager of Magnolia Petroleum Company. Upon Mr. Ebby's passing in 1938, he left Mr. Dave and his wife Betty $1,000. In 1940, Mr. Dave and Betty used that money to purchase several properties in the Elm Thicket neighborhood.
It sounds like the Daves really knew how to invest $1,000.
They were very wise. On one of his Elm Thicket properties, Mr. Dave built Dave's Barbecue, a restaurant that served blacks only. As the popularity of his restaurant grew, he served takeout to the white workers who were tasked with expanding Love Field to accommodate the expansion growth. As a result of this expansion growth, Highland Park was swelling to the east, and the current Bluffview neighborhood, have you heard of that?
I have.
Okay. Well, it was also pushing black residents out of Elm Thicket. Mr. L.T. Dave didn't budge, as he knew that someday his properties would be valuable and a hot commodity for the city of Dallas and other wealthy landowners. Instead, he smartly expanded his restaurant to include a whites-only dining room.
Now that's catering to your clientele.
Yes. Mr. Dave expanded his portfolio to include several rent houses, a motel, a service station, and a wood yard where residents bought wood for cooking on their wood-burning stoves.
Now that's diversifying.
Diversifying indeed. Ownership of all of these properties made Mr. Dave the largest landowner in the Elm Thicket North Park area, which became a huge problem for the city of Dallas, especially when they decided to expand Love Field. In 1955, Mr. Dave was given two choices by the city. He could sell or face condemnation.
Sounds scary.
He settled on a payment of $125,525 for all his properties
Wow.
and businesses in the Elm Thicket North Park area.
Wow.
And to his credit, Mr. Dave built at least 4 barbecue restaurants, all named Dave's Place.
Now that's original.
He chose to work at his Westmoreland location while he rented out the other 3 restaurants.
Is that in the Oak Cliff area?
I think so. But this genius idea was an early and inexpensive version of what we know today as franchising.
Ah.
Mr. Dave also owned properties in other areas of Dallas consisting of 3 ranches. One of his ranches was a 192-acre cattle ranch at the edge of Lufoot Airfield in Grand Prairie.
Did you say Lufoot?
Lufoot.
I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
I think it doesn't exist anymore, but Mr. Dave sure did love buying properties around airports. By 1965, this land was also encircled by various developments. As a result of all the property and wealth he attained through the years, Mr. Dave was tagged as Dallas's first black millionaire. His legacy lives on today through his foundation and various community events.
It sounds like he was a great businessman and a trailblazer in his own right.
I think so.
Well, another pearl of Elm Thicket was Hillard Golf Course. It was a 65-acre, 9-hole course. In 1950, it was dedicated by the Dallas Negro Golf Association as the first Negro golf course. In 1954, part of the golf course and the adjoining Elm Thicket Park was repossessed by the city of Dallas for the expansion of Love Field Airport. This reduced the original 9 holes down to 6.
That's awful.
Yes, pretty awful. The Elm Thicket North Park area experienced quite a change, including gentrification in every sense of the word. Now, Jonathan Maples is a longtime resident who sat down with the Dallas Morning News a few years ago to discuss his neighborhood. He currently serves as the president of the Elm Thicket North Park Neighborhood Association. He affectionately refers to his beloved neighborhood as the poor man's Highland Park. He recalls that a few years ago, the neighborhood looked as it had for decades. It was a neighborhood for the modest middle class. Homes were wood and brick, built between the 1920s and 50s. The residents who lived there, they held professions such as doctors and educators, and many of them were employees of the Love Field Airport. By the 60s, blacks and whites and eventually Latinos lived side by side in the area, but not always comfortably. Back then, a row of red-tip plants called photinas ran down the middle of Elm Thicket on Roper Street. They acted as a dividing line, which was the neighborhood's version of the railroad tracks.
An quieter, prettier version
Indeed.
of a dividing line.
Yes, those plants are still there today. Well, by the 1980s, crime had permeated the neighborhood. Things like drugs and prostitution, gangs, and even troublemakers from Highland Park crept in the neighborhood. It would take nearly 2 decades for the community and law enforcement to purge the crime from the area. In October of 2014, the Wright Amendment expired. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, but can you expound on it?
Yes. Well, as I was reading, I came to, the Wright Amendment, and I had no idea what it was, so I kept digging. Let me tell you what I found. Well, the Wright Amendment was a federal law that restricted air traffic at Dallas Love Field Airport. This was an impactful event because it made the Elm Thicket North Park neighborhood attractive to outsiders seeking to purchase that prime land. 5 years ago, houses at the intersection of Prosper and Lynette Lane were small, slightly worn, and undistinguished. They sat on the tax rolls with the value of about $43,000. Presently, the structures that replaced them are valued closer to $800,000.
I'd rather pay taxes on $43,000 rather than that $800,000.
Me too. The Elm Thicket North Park neighborhood of times past is slowly vanishing. Much like other black neighborhoods in the Dallas area, it has been invaded by construction crews. They are replacing homes that were once affordable with more expensive structures. Due to the steady increase of property value, many of the Elm Thicket lifers have found it much easier to just take the money and run rather than suffer the high costs. Along with the other Elm Thicket residents, are standing their ground. They have been actively working with the city of Dallas to preserve their historical, beloved neighborhood. In September of 2017, the city of Dallas granted a zoning hearing to residents of Elm Thicket. As recently as last year, they are still having heated debates concerning the proposed zoning. We actually have some footage of the activism that's happening in that area. Would you like to take a look?
Why, yes, I would.
And integrity of the neighborhood.
This is a prime example.
From what some describe as a trend of larger In the shadows of Dallas Love Field,
Elm Thicket is an old, diverse neighborhood.
there's Elm Thicket North Park.
Deregulation pushed all the African Americans over on this side of Lemon.
An historically African American community where longtime neighbors say pride still runs high.
The neighborhood has always been very inclusive.
But these days, certain signs of division are ever obvious around this quaint community as neighbors here debate proposed zoning changes.
Deregulation pushed us from the east side of Lemon Avenue. Gentrification now is starting to push us out of the neighborhood.
Jonathan Maples and Sonia McHenry are longtime residents and part of a grassroots push called Save Elm Thicket North Park.
We do have those that want to come in and make a lot of changes to the neighborhood.
They're among neighbors who say they support zoning changes that would protect the history and integrity of the neighborhood.
This is a prime example.
From what some describe as a trend of larger, more contemporary homes towering over traditional structures.
We want a good quality of life here.
Some neighbors say they support zoning changes that would limit the size, height, and rooftops of new homes that don't fit the character of this historic neighborhood.
I oppose the zoning changes. Thank you.
But not all neighbors agree with the proposed zoning changes.
You're going to prohibit my ability to grow?
During a public hearing over the weekend, several Elm Thicket North Park neighbors voiced opposition.
To make changes in the middle of a boom just doesn't make sense to me.
The preservation of Elm Thicket North Park as it was 15 or 20 years ago is just no longer possible.
Though divided, neighbors on both sides say they believe it's about protecting their property.
My biggest fear is this neighborhood to be lost, like State Thomas.
The next step is another hearing before the City Plan Commission before the zoning issue goes to City Council. In Dallas, I'm Damon Fernandez.
Thank you, Alicia and Tanya, for that story. There's that gentrification that I talked about, that I mentioned earlier. So let me ask our studio audience, how many in here, by show of raise of hand, have ever heard of the area of Upper White Rock? Anyone? I see about one hand. Okay, so let me share with you about Upper White Rock. Anderson Bonner, born into slavery in Alabama, by 1870 he arrived to the Dallas area. Okay, so I think there was maybe two hands. And he worked on a family farm just north of White Rock Creek. Mr. Bonner was able to obtain a significant amount of land, making him, and I quote, a financial phenomenon of early Dallas, according to the Texas State Historical Association Handbook of Texas. One of his earliest purchases was on August 10th, 1874, and by then there were about 2,000 blacks in the Dallas area. And I think we heard it was someone had 65 acres. The golf course was 65 acres. Well, Mr. Bonner bought 60 acres. So that golf course, I believe, had 9 holes on it, and here was Mr. Bonner who purchased 60 acres of land. He soon began supplementing his farm income by leasing out land and housing to sharecroppers. Mr. Bonner was an astute businessman and possessed an entrepreneurial spirit. He continued to build and ultimately owned nearly 2,000 acres of land, located mostly in the White Rock Creek and surrounding areas, including Richardson. Where Medical City Dallas Hospital is today, his estate used to sit on that land. Let's catch up to that crazy person with that wig. As I think she's over in that area.
Standing here in what was once called Upper White Rock, I'm at the Anderson Bonner Park. Now, if you remember last year, we talked about Bob Jones, the gentleman who had land over at South Lake. Anderson Bonner, like Mr. Jones, had acres and acres of land. Mr. Bonner's land is where Medical City Hospital now sits. So we're here at the park, Anderson Bonner Park, which is part of the White Rock Creek trail. So if you have a Saturday available and you're eager to get out and walk, try out Anderson Bonner Park, the trail that's here. I believe it's like a mile long. Back to you, Kimberly.
Right. Awesome reporting there, the other Kimberly. Now, I would like to take this time to introduce to you our committee. Up front, we have Shanine Jones, Belinda Yohanana, Marisha Perry, Alicia Jones, and Tanya Anderson. Also, who's not with us tonight is Tony Hill. So I just want to ask a couple of questions. This is our talk back segment of the program. The question is, I would like two of the committee members to answer. What has it been like putting together the last two Black History programs during the pandemic? Anybody want to go first?
First of all, I would like to say that, we have a really great community that we work with, and I don't think we missed a step. I think that we actually worked really well together, but one of the things that I miss most is that the fellowship that we have after the program. And we would go over to the Family Life Center, and we would show all of the things that we had, all the research that we had, and the interactions with the congregation. And so that's one of the things that I missed, but the research and everything and just working together with everyone, I really don't think that we missed a step with that. And I think that we kind of kept that going, and thank God for technology.
Anyone on this side?
So what's different this year and last year versus the year before? For me, again, piggybacking off of Belinda, being here together with everyone, displaying our items over there. But what I really enjoyed about the last couple of years is we were able to step outside of the box. We were able to come up with different ideas and ways to still bring you all history, but in a different way. We were able to go on location, and I'm the one of the group who likes to do road trips. And so even though we were local, we were still able to get out and about, do research. And for me, not being a native of Texas, Dallas in particular, I really learned a lot of Black history, a lot of good information, and I really appreciate the congregation, the leadership, for allowing us to still continue to have the Black History program even during this pandemic, to give you all history each year. So for me, it was an experience, and I enjoyed it.
Anyone to my left? To my right?
I echo with Shanine on learning Black history about Dallas. I was actually born here in Dallas, but I was raised in East Texas. But all of the different things that we learned this year and last year were things that I didn't know. And so what I do miss about how we used to do things pre-pandemic was the interaction that we've had with different members of the congregation. I guess one of our last in-person programs, we were able to interact with Brother Rodriguez. And before that time, I hadn't had much interaction with him. But we were so blessed to have that interaction with him. And not just him, but others. And so being on the Black History program allows us to deepen connections with people that we normally wouldn't have any interactions with. So that's one of the things that's different and that I miss. But I do like the new setup.
All right, thank you. So, thank our audience for coming out today. And so, ladies, you know, we have this one almost in the books behind us. Almost. We're almost done with this one. So before we head on out of here, anything we want to let the people know?
Okay, guys, I got a question for you. What are we going to do next year? Sounds like a good idea to me.
Okay.
Hamilton Park.
Hamilton Park.
Would you stand with me as we sing Lift Every Voice? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let us resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Let our sing son of a new day begun, and let us march on till victory is won.
As Brother Bradshaw makes his way up front to do some remarks, I would like to echo what Shanine said about the leadership allowing us to continue this program. Although we haven't been able to put on the traditional plays that we've been doing, we've been able to still share information about our culture, our background, our history that I know I didn't know existed here in Dallas until the last few years. So I'm glad that we still had that opportunity. I'm glad that we were able to put our heads together and to do something different than what we've done in the past, and to still present a program to you. Thank you for the opportunity. Brother Bradshaw.
You know, I feel like saying we're back. And although we may be limited in number tonight, but it is certainly great and grand to see everyone who is here tonight. I know you all are standing, and I know you are expecting just a few remarks. And we certainly appreciate those who are streaming with us. We just want to thank this committee. They deserve a great hand of applause. And I'm glad you are standing because they deserve a standing ovation. These sisters have done an outstanding job. I mean, this is almost doctoral dissertation research that they have done, and we are so very thankful for them and to them for what they have shared with us tonight. I just want to give you two things. They went to a lot of work throughout the Dallas area, and one place they went to was Booker T. Washington High School. And Booker T. Washington said, "I've learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed." And as we looked at all of the history of Dallas, we see that much has been overcome, and there has been much that our people have gone through, and we're just praising God for what we have been able to experience. And then I want also to give us a scriptural perspective. Job said in Job 8, verse number 8, "For inquire, please, of the former age, and consider the things discovered by their fathers." And I think this has been a night of discovery where we could go back and look at the former things and learn from these things. And I certainly appreciate our Black History Committee for what they have brought to us tonight. May God bless you all.
So that's it for our program this evening. Those here in the audience, we have a special treat for you. So as you exit the door, please grab a bag. And we look forward to bringing you Hamilton Park in 2023. Have a good evening.